Hey guys, and welcome to the Intentional Investor Show, the show that gives you tips and tricks in real estate investing to create ultimately the life that you love. Today, we have such a phenomenal show for you. Today, we have our very first guest, Mr. Brett Snodgrass from Simple Wholesaling, the owner that's in the club seats in the side box, and he peels back the layers of how he built an amazing business doing over 250 transactions a year. Guys, are we excited about this?
I'm so excited.
Good.
What an amazing show this would be.
Good. So we just met with him, right? And he shared some amazing gems. Number one being talking about scaling a business, how he became, what was he? He was a teacher. And then he went from earning $30,000 a year to nearly $500,000.
Yeah, that was an amazing story. I mean, even when he talked about like his family and how he balances all of that with his family and the business and the things that he implemented to make sure that it all works together. Man, so many nuggets in there.
So many.
Yeah. And I learned it's not only the what, and it's also the who when you're scaling to get the right people, the right mindset. That's so important. And I learned so much.
The right team, the right people, the right culture, and how to build that from the ground up. He also mentioned something really great. He talked about how, you go from making an average income of like 30 to 50,000 a year, teaching school, right? He was making 30,000, and then all of a sudden he has all of this money coming in. How to be the best steward of those funds and how to really navigate through that journey and not become obsessed over the thing, over the money, and more so diving into his purpose, which is a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. Well, let's get ready to go.
Let's get ready.
Let's go.
Welcome, everyone, again to another show of The Intentional Investor. We are so excited to have a phenomenal guest here with us today. Again, my name is, Melissa Asbury, the host. We have co-hosts Keston on Purpose, Keston Glasgow, and Oscar the closer, Oscar Satyawan from Chicago. But today we have Mr. Brett Snodgrass from Simple Wholesaling. Yeah. Brett.
Yo, what's going on, guys? Thanks, Oscar, Keston, Melissa, having me on. Super excited, pumped to be with you guys today, The Intentional Investor, and ready to rock and roll.
Yeah.
Welcome.
We are so pumped. So as you know, Brett, we are a show on intentional investing as it relates to transforming lives across the world, right? And we know that you do that very, very well. If we can, let's just go through a brief bio of all the wonderful things that you've done. So, Brett Snodgrass, you have been a full-time real estate investor for 14 years. You've specialized in wholesaling, wholetailing, creative finance, scaling a business from one-man band to an amazing team, running hundreds of deals per year. You've also specialized in knowledge firsthand, having several facets of real estate investing. You are an investor in Indianapolis, Indiana, and you absolutely love being a Hoosier. And we'll get into that. So you work with investors all over the country, and gosh, you buy and sell over 250 properties a year.
Wow.
I know, right? I could keep going, but I am just for a couple more minutes.
We've started that to Melissa.
I know. You've built passive streams of income by creating over 50 creative financing deals a year, which is phenomenal. And in the past 5 years, Brett has gone from one person to over 10 people on your team, and you have tripled your deal flow in 5 years.
Yeah, you're making me blush.
Wow.
I should. These are all facts. So let's just get to kind of your passion here before we go ahead and have the questions that we have presented to you. So you are a man of faith, and you are a real estate investor. You have combined your business knowledge and bringing faith to the opportunity to everyone that you encounter, spreading the kingdom of God, which we absolutely love. In your mission and your purpose behind your company, it's obvious with Simple Wholesaling. You have a passion for helping others in business and growing in their professional growth and personal growth too. You enjoy spending time with your wife, Karen, and your 4 children, and you love taking mission trips to impact the world. Welcome, Brett.
Wow.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Intentional Investor. And thanks, Melissa, for that bio. And sometimes I always tell people, like, where were you at? Because sometimes we get so stuck into feeling about, oh, we got to grow a little bit more and we got to do all these different things. And then sometimes we forget where were you at 5 years ago. And it's good to reflect. So love it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Yeah. We're so humbled to have you here. Number one, you are our very first guest, and true story, our relationship goes back a little ways, not only with myself, but also Oscar. Oscar, do you want to share something that you sent to Brett back in 2016?
I'm kind of embarrassed now. so
No.
so 2016, right? I mean, compared to like now 14 years of Brett, right? 2016 is the year I start. And as most other investor, you listen to podcasts. You go to forums and whatnot. And that back then, podcast was all the rage, right? So you obviously go to podcasts, and guess what? One of the podcasts I listened to, I think one of the first one was yours, Simple Wholesaling, right? And I didn't even know what a wholesaling is. I just type in real estate, right? And yours popped up. Like, so your show was already one of the top one on iTunes, right? On the podcast. So congrats on that, first of all, so, but I remember getting inspired by listening, like basically I binge here or not binge watch, right? Binge here, you binge heard your show, right? And on like 1.5 speed, so I could catch up and everything. And I was always inspired, like being a new investor or not even an investor, right? Being a student, I was always like, there's something about what you say and everything. It's not only the methodology, it's about the vision, casting the vision, it's about that journey, right? It's about having fun in that journey too, and learning from your mistakes, and also inspiring people to just do more than real estate. Because, you have a section where you talk about your spiritual, your faith. And I think that actually separates from other podcasts, where other podcasts is just like, do this, and hey, here's our affiliate link. Bye. I mean, right? I mean, just to be honest. So, so I gathered the courage to, I thought, because I think every podcast it's a superstar, right? So I'm like, okay, well, how do I reach out to Brett? And back then, Jaren, right? So I'm like, I gotta give values. So you know what? My first subject here, you gave an ebook, right? When for people, right? Yeah. So see, I know that much, right? So I read your book multiple times, and I saw a misspell. So my first subject was like ebook misspell on page 25, and I thought that would, I thought you're probably getting 1,000 emails every day from people, so that would actually catch your attention. So that was my subject. I mean, if you still have it, I don't know if it's that, October 21st, 2016. Ebook misspell on page 25. That was my subject. Because I want to give values.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. I was really good at math. I was a math teacher at once in my life. Never in English. That was always my worst subject. So thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah. So, but I want to. I realize right now how stupid that subject was. But I wanted to give values. I just don't want to say, "Hey, Brett, teach me." Because I always say, okay, well, if I can give you money, or I can give you whatever, that I can right now, I got to give you something, before asking for something. Right. So, but here's what I wrote down, right? I'm excited, about the community. And this is where I think your vision and your heart capture mine, because one of this is, I'm just getting started in REI. And instead of saying, my goal is to get 100 houses, multi-units, blah, 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 become a millionaire and retire, I said my long-term goal is to be able to attain financial freedom, to be able to partner with local missionaries and pastors in Indonesia, because I'm Indonesian, to build orphanages and schools for homeless and sexually abused children. Currently, I'm in a local church and providing housings for our members in need, especially with some of them who become foster parents and church planters in Chicago. But that's how, your vision and your podcast change people's mindset, right? Because now you're not only saying, I want to be in real estate, wholesaling, flip, blah, 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 whatever, so I can be on the beach somewhere, but it opens up your eyes that there's bigger things that you can do, which is, I think, in 14 years, this is where you're at. right?
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback on that. Yeah, exactly. I mean, our podcast has always been number one, just glorifying God. That's obviously our heart. And, there's so many podcasts out there that just talk about the money. And we do talk about that. We do talk about financial freedom and how to build wealth, but it goes way deeper than that. And then I've had guests on my show that, hey, what's your ultimate goal in life? And their ultimate goal is, I just want to make a buttload of money. And then I started digging a little bit deeper, and I talk a lot about purpose, and I believe that people, they make a lot of money, they sell their business, they have a lot of time, then they are sitting on the beach and they're miserable because they don't have any more purpose in their life, and they go back and they try to figure that out. And that's what I talk a lot about on my podcast now. It's just like, okay, well, this is your vehicle to what? And exactly like you said, Oscar, missionaries, that's what does it for you. So awesome.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that, Brett. And, with that being said, and you talked about being a teacher and all of that, like, tell us about who you are, because we know that you are an athlete, and we know, like, tell us about your journey and what got you started towards this purpose that I'm sure you feel a lot more fulfilled today.
Yeah. No, thanks for asking. So just a little bit of a history about my background. My parents were both teachers, so we weren't rich, we weren't wealthy. We came from very middle class. My dad, I think his highest paycheck or salary per year was $60,000. My mom was a preschool teacher, so hers was probably like 20. I don't know, but so that's where I came from. My dad was a high school basketball coach, so basketball was our life. If you guys ever seen the movie Hoosiers, that was like we were like the movie Hoosiers in my house. But I learned a lot from the game of basketball. My dad, one lesson my dad taught me every day was like, Brett, you're either going to get better at basketball or get worse. What are you going to choose today? And I use that in every area of my life, whether it's business. Am I going to be better at my business or worse? Am I going to be a better parent or worse? Am I going to be a better husband or worse today? I need to be intentional, just like what you guys are talking about. If you drift, you're probably going to be worse. So everything that you do, you have to be intentional. Parenting, husband, business, whatever it is. So that's why I like to talk about purpose. So just kind of fast forward, I went to college. I played basketball in college. I became a teacher because my parents were teachers, and typically kids do what their parents do. So I was a teacher for a couple of years, and I was actually substitute teaching, making about 12 to 15,000 a year, because substitute teachers don't make much money. And that's when I started reading books about real estate and Rich Dad Poor Dad and The Millionaire Next Door and how to become wealthy. And it really just kind of changed my life. And I started working with a real estate investor. I was a bird dog for him, and I was finding him land deals. And I remember I made a commission check, and it was like $7,000. This was a huge deal. Yeah, so $7,000. This was hundreds of thousands of dollar deal. Found this deal, and my commission was $7,000, and that was more money than I had ever had ever in my life by like 10 times. Right? So that's really what changed my life. I'm like, you know what? I think I can do this. I'm working with this real investor. He's not that smart, and I think I can do what he's doing. So that's where I just kind of started. I found my first house in 2017, and my dad wanted to retire from teaching. He'd been a teacher for 33 years, and he wanted to get out. So I said, hey, Dad, let's buy this house. We bought it for $9,000. And we sold it for 15. We made $6,000. And again, I'm a substitute teacher making 12,000 a year. This is half my year I made. And light bulb went off, and that was 14 years ago. We've done about 3,000 deals since.
Wow.
And it's been a great ride, and I've enjoyed it. It's been awesome. And here we are talking to you guys.
Amazing.
So.
Wow.
So just to clarify, you said you've been doing this for 14 years. So did you buy and sell your first house in 2007?
That is correct. Yeah. I bought my first house at the end of 2007. And the things go fast. I remember listening to this one guy, and he was talking about building wealth. And he said, when you figure things out, like money starts to come in like you've never seen before. And it went really fast for me. So I think we bought our first house in 2007. We did about 10 deals that year. I was still kind of teaching, working with my real estate investor friend. And then the next year, 2008, we did 150 deals. I think, we ended up making, I probably made $500,000 that year. So like, I literally went from $12,000 to $20,000 to like $500,000 in just a couple of years. So like it came like a storm hit me, which could be good. And it can also be a curse. I talk about that because it's like, I didn't know what to do with it. It's like when someone wins the lottery, I didn't know how to handle it very well. And it didn't go very well for a few years.
I actually want to, I think it's very important for that, right? Because like sudden increase of wealth, I love that you say it could be a curse, and that hit me, right? Because it's almost similar to what happened to me, right? And the thing is, it becomes like suddenly it becomes powerful, and you becomes like feeling like you becomes like you're the top of the world, but it becoming a fake feeling of independent, right? Can you tell us a little bit more? Because I'm really interested in that, because I was there and I hit something, and now I'm kind of not starting over, but I want to know what your journey with that, getting from 12,000 to like $500,000 in like a year.
Yeah. Well, number one, I worked all the time. So literally I had a relationship. So I had a daughter at that time out of wedlock. So I had a daughter and her mom, we had a relationship, and things went crazy south. I was working all the time, 80 hours a week. Because I didn't know, how to handle all that. And then with the money part of it, I mean, my goal was to be a millionaire by the time I was 30. I was about 28 at that time, getting close to that. And I was all about money. I mean, if you looked at my vision board, 90% of it was stuff, money, whatever money could buy, mansions, Dodge Vipers, Ferraris, whatever money could buy. That was just my ultimate goal. And I went out and I started to do that stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, I made all this money. Let's buy this big house. Okay, great. I'm going to buy this really fancy car. Got that. Hey, I like boating. Let's buy a fancy boat. So I did that. And then things kind of hit the fan. My daughter's mom ended up leaving. And then I just remember the feeling. I'm sitting in my home. I have a 2-year-old daughter at that time. I have all this stuff and I was completely miserable. And I was like, this is not good for me. So that's when I really searched out and I gave my life to Christ when I was 30 years old. So it's funny how like my goal was to be crazy rich by 30. And then I became crazy rich in a different way by giving my life to Christ at 30. So it's pretty
amazing.
Cool.
Wow. That's so amazing. It's, I'll just say this and then pass it to Melissa. Just from a quote that I heard in a book, it says it's not enough for you to be at the right place at the right time. We all kind of say that. He says that you have to be the right person at the right place at the right time, and it directly correlates to what you're saying. And man, so powerful. So powerful.
Yeah.
That's what my mom used to say. She used to say that all the time because I didn't get married until I was 32. Actually, Melissa introduced me to my wife, Karen, which is a different story. But it was pretty cool. My mom used to say that. She said, Brett, it's not about finding the right person. It's about being the right person. And I always took that with me. And I'm like, I got to be the right person before I can find the right person. So anyway.
Amazing.
1000%. So I'm just thinking about your mindset at that point, right? You could have come up with so many excuses. You had this little girl Kaylin, we'll just say Kaylin, she's so sweet. She's 2 years old. The woman that you were with had left you. You had everything in the world. You were absolutely miserable. At that moment, you could have chosen one direction or another. Like, what was it in you? What would you tell the audience today if they're feeling like they're in the deepest valley? What would you tell them to encourage them, inspire them, and to get them to their best life?
Yeah. Well, number one, I talk a lot about freedom, and so I think number one, like I was a slave to performance, to achievement, thinking that if I could succeed enough in my life, then I would reach the mountain and I would be fulfilled. So that's what I put all my energy, all my eggs into that basket. If I can be successful enough, whatever that means, for me, it was like, if I can be a millionaire, then everything else would work out. And that wasn't. And so I think for me, it was just like, to be free in Christ was obviously the end result of that journey. It took me a long time to figure that out, but I would just say, find the purpose. And that was for me is just like, so I was just searching for what is going to fulfill me. What is my purpose in life? And I finally found that with God, he created me for a reason. He gave me certain gifts, and how can I glorify him when it's all said and done? Because if it's all about you, it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Completely agree. And we three, Keston, Oscar, and I have talked about this on this show. If we're constantly pointing the finger back at us and not at our audience or not at God, who's given us this amazing opportunity, we're missing the mark. We're not helping people because it's not about any of us. It's about the journey, sharing what you can do to help others and blessing them, because the power of real estate is real, Brett. You know that in your own life.
So real.
Yeah.
So real. Matter of fact, I want to go back a couple of minutes into something you said, which I think is directly relates to where we are today, having just gone through COVID. So you made $500,000 in 2008 when it was a crisis, right? Like we were going through one of the biggest financial crisis when it comes to real estate, right? It was the bubble burst. A lot of people were getting out of real estate, and you got in and made your first crap, this is real, right? Likewise, in with COVID, that's when I actually got into real estate. When everybody was running out, when people were saying, don't get in, it was just so much uncertainty. And so let's talk about that for a minute and what your mindset was during that time when all investors were running the other way. You ran in and made a lot of money. So tell us about that for a second.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, honestly, just kind of looking back, just to be honest, I didn't really know much. I didn't know what I was doing, number one. So I think if I would have got in maybe 2004, 2005, it could have been a different story for me, number one. But I think it just relates to, you can do any market, right? So like stock market, for example, it can be a down market, people can make a lot of money. It can be an up market, people can make a lot of money. And you just got to figure out the game. And the game changes, right? So what I do today we don't do anything that we used to do back in the day, hardly, about finding certain deals, right? So you have to adjust with the game, and the market is going to keep changing. So put your seatbelts on. The next 5 years, it's going to be a lot of changes, a lot of volatility, and you just have to adapt. You have to adjust. So I think for me, I had some blinders on. All I knew was there was some super cheap houses out there, and a lot of REO foreclosures. And I just figured out a game, just like the game of Monopoly or whatever game of life. And I figured out a system and a strategy, and it was working. And then we did that until it wasn't working. And they were like, okay, this game's not working anymore. Let's play a different game. And we just adjusted and figured it out.
So good.
So many times, a lot of people, they quit at that point because they can't adapt really quickly. And a lot of people who listen to this podcast, they are like, let's say 9-to-5ers, people who are doing some real estate investing and things like that. And the reason why most of us, and I recently left my 9-to-5, stay and not take that leap, at least in my experience, is because we don't have to adapt much because we're told what to do, versus now you're a business owner. You got to be the brain that adapts to change. And we've seen a lot of businesses go belly up during COVID because they couldn't adapt fast enough, and so to the audience that's listening, like, if it is that you are taking this business owner route, adapting is definitely, being resilient is one of the biggest attributes to getting to this, to being successful. Would you agree with that, Brett?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, one of the worst things, and I used to say this all the time, is, why do you guys do it that way? And the answer would always be, well, that's just the way we've always done it. And that's the wrong answer. It's because, well, things are changing. I mean, technology these days was a lot different than when I first started 14 years ago, right? I mean, there's apps on your phone. You can check out these maps. You can look at houses now without even going and looking at them. You can have people take pictures of them. You can hire independent contractors so much easier. It's just crazy. So yeah, I mean, we adapted a lot. And like you said, Kesson, just don't quit. I mean, it's funny, like I like a lot of change in my life. I like to do different things, but real estate is one thing I haven't really change that. I just stayed the course. And I think if you're consistent each day, take small baby steps, and eventually it's just all those baby steps come into this giant thing. And then like the bio, like, wow, 3,000 deals, 250 deals a year. I don't know how, but it's just those little steps that we just took each day, like we're still making money. I love it. Real estate is because like, the residual income, the rentals, or some of the seller financing deals that we do, it's crazy. Like we make money today on something that we did 8 years ago. And I'm like, wow, that's cool. You can't do that in your 9 to 5 all the time.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So Brett, I'm just curious because the audience is probably wondering this. What is the one thing that you did, right? We're kind of missing that part of the story. You were going from 1 to 2 to 3 houses, then all of a sudden to over 100 in a year. Like what was the one thing that you did that made a big difference in that period of time?
I think for us, it was really just a simple model. So that's kind of why I came up with the company Simple Wholesaling. And back then, it was it was just different. It was REO properties. We learned a good system. So our system back then was we would look at the 200 MLS deals, put in 200 offers, get 10 of them accepted. And that was the game. And then they were super cheap properties, and we sell them, and we make $3,000 to $5,000 per property. That was just the game that we played. Yeah. This is the same thing. We just don't do MLS deals that much, but it's more private sellers, sending out postcards, cold calling, but it's all the same. It's like, okay, we get 200 people, 200 calls. We go look at 50 houses, and we just break it down. We get 10 accepted, and then that's just the game. So I think for us, it was just like, learn the game that you're playing and keep it simple, learn the strategy and keep it simple. We try to complicate things too much. And Oscar was mentioning this, like I see a lot of people, I'm doing wholesaling. Okay, I'm going to fix and flip this property. Okay, I'm going to hold some rentals over here, do some seller financing, have this self-storage unit. I might look at this commercial building next week. And you're like, what are you doing?
Sounds like me.
What are you doing? Like, that's so complicated. And for me, and I've had so many opportunities that people throw at me all the time. And I've had to learn to say no. I've told you this, Melissa, you have to learn to say no, because people say, hey, Brett, why don't you do this education course? Go speak. Plus you're doing all these deals. Plus you're just digging all these holes. But that's like 5, 6, 7 different businesses. Yeah. And that's fine. But you have to manage all that, right? You just can't do it all at once. So
I love that advice. Oscar, do you have anything to share? Because I feel like he's speaking your love language right now.
Yeah, I'm overwhelmed. I get so many questions. I'm the engineer / nerd in this group, so I always want to find questions and answers, right? So, so basically from what you're telling us is that know your purpose, and kind of like also know your limit, right? Because as much there's opportunities, at one point you want to keep it simple. Yeah. Right? So, what do you
have to measure? And this is something that I talk about all the time, which is freedom. Is most people measure money. Which is very easy to measure. It's math, black and white. I'm going to spend this much money on expenses, make this much money, and that's what they measure. For me, I measure a lot of things right now. That's like, number one, how much is it going to cost me in money? How much is it going to cost me in my time? Right? It's like, okay, my time is very valuable to me, and there's certain things I want to do. So I have to measure that. I measure my time. I measure my sanity. A lot of people don't measure their sanity, and what I mean by that is how big of a headache is this going to give me today, right? Like if I do this, whatever it is, like how stressed out am I going to be over all this, right? That's the third one. And then the last one is purpose. Like, is this, once you figure out your purpose, does this align with it? And there's a lot of things that don't align with my purpose. So like if it doesn't, then it's no. So like, I just think that as the listeners out there, you have to measure more than just the money. That's just key.
Yeah. And I'll put a plug in here, because I'm, as much as I like to say I am the planner in this group, I also hate planning. It has worked for me. And so now I started following this 12-week year planner, where you pick 3 things that you want to work on. You come up with strategies for those 3 things, and those are the things that you execute on only for the next 12 weeks. Everything else gets a no. And I feel like in trying to scale and do more, and we're kind of changing some of the business models. Right now, I feel so confused because I'm out of my 12-week year plans. And it's just like, matter of fact, this morning, I didn't even write down what I was going to do today because I know what I'm going to do, but it's just like, I feel so not planned right now. I'm kind of everywhere. Mm-hmm. And now I'm executing on a lower level based on not knowing where I'm going. I know what I'm going to do today, but it doesn't align with what I initially had planned. Mm-hmm. And so I'm really, really glad you said that, because when you're not focused, you got nothing done. And when it doesn't align with your purpose, it's just, at some point you wake up and it's like, what am I doing? And you almost want to quit, right?
And as entrepreneurs, we get so obsessed with things. And I've realized that, like, I get really, really obsessed with this new idea, this new thing that I want to do, and everything else just goes out the window. So let's say you have those 3 things and you're like, okay, I want to focus on this with my marriage. I want it to increase this, my business. I want to, do this type of thing in my business, this strategy. But then this new idea pops up and it's like everything else just kind of goes away. And it's good to have that right in front of you so you can constantly see it, constantly look at it, is because you get that shiny object like, oh, this, and you got to just keep your purpose right in front of you and move forward. So
Keston, just scratch my idea that we talked about earlier. He just schooled me. Basically, that was like the last 5 minutes. That was just schooling me. That's pretty much it. So
every day I tell Oscar I gotta pray for him because he comes with a new idea, and it's like I'll say pray instead of rebuke you, because it's like, oh my God, Oscar, we gotta stay focused, because like, let's write it down and see what part of the 12-week year next year we could put it in. And when I say next year, I mean 12 weeks. Every 12 weeks is a year in how we follow this planner. Yeah. So it's like, Oscar, please, bro, come, like, you're killing me, man.
Sometimes you got to sleep on it, because it's funny, because when you put it out there in that 12 weeks, by the time the next quarter comes up or whatever, you're like, oh, I don't even care about that anymore. Right?
Exactly.
That's true. I think that's why it's so important to make sure that your purpose aligns with everything you do. And I love something that you said at the beginning of the interview, Brett. You said either you're getting better or you're getting worse every single day in those different activities. So let's just take your life and let's just look at this on a paradigm, right? So your dad was super competitive. He was your basketball coach, raised you to basically say, like, if I achieve so much, if I do X, Y, and Z, my worth and my value is increased, right? So you already had that mindset. Then you started your business. You had a child. Then you started this business. You were starting literally from the ground up. You had nothing to lose. You put it all in. Mm-hmm. Realized that by doing a little bit of everything wasn't getting you anywhere. Thought, if I just do this one thing, if I do this one thing really well, this is going to blow up. And that's what you did. You got to that point where you're doing over 250 deals. You're creating over 50 creative financing deals a year. And then you thought, I need to pivot again. And I remember this conversation that we had, and you said, I don't know if I'm passionate about wholesaling. I think I'm passionate about other things. Mm-hmm. So take us to that next step in your journey, because you host what's called the Brett Snodgrass podcast. Mm-hmm. So you've been doing that the last 4 years. Can you tell us a little bit about that and the folks that you're interviewing, and what that looks like today for you?
Yeah. So for me, I'm 41 now. And so pandemic hit last year, and I didn't know what was going to happen in real estate. We were all kind of freaking out. I didn't know what was going to happen. And, we had this amazing business, and here I'm like, man, this thing could crumble in 6 months. I have no idea. But, a relief kind of came over me a little bit, because this is a lot. I mean, it was a lot to handle, a lot of pressure, 250 deals a year. I got this team now. I'm feeding other families. One of my employees has 6 kids. So I'm thinking about, I got to feed 6 kids now, and plus all my other families. And so when I thought that the business might crumble, honestly, I was maybe okay with some of that because I say, okay, this could maybe bring back some of this sanity because I didn't have a lot of sanity in my life. I had a lot of pressure and stress. Mm-hmm. And that's when I realized maybe I shouldn't be the visionary of this company anymore. And that's when Brian Snyder, he was the COO of the company. And I offered him, hey, why don't you just take over everything? And I'll just be the owner. I'll just sit in the owner's box over here. I'll be your biggest fan, biggest supporter. I'm going to root you guys on, but you make the decisions. And it's your deal. And he said yes. So that's been a year now. And I honestly, real estate for me has never been a crazy passion. Like it's always been a tool. It's always been a vehicle to get me to the purpose that I love. I love people. I love God and pouring into people. I'm always the guy at my mastermind groups. They're always talking about real estate and this deal and that deal and making this much money. And I'm always the guy that says, hey, why don't we implement this system into your families so you can be an amazing dad? I'm always that guy. Like, and everybody's like, oh, okay. So
sounds like me.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. They either love me or hate me, but that's just always been just kind of my purpose. And like I said, I'm getting ready to interview like Alex Kendrick today, which he's done a lot of movies and things like that. But he even talked about this. Like, number one, I'm a child of God first, so like I gotta remember that. Number two, I'm a husband. Gotta remember that. I'm a dad. That's number three. And then I'm an entrepreneur, right? Entrepreneur, that stuff's gonna change, but all this other stuff, it needs to remain. And I have to, really, really remember that. So I think like my purpose is to remind people of that message. And I see all the time, we talk about your why, like, okay, what is your why? Okay. And a lot of times people say, well, my why is my family. That's like the common answer. My why is my family. I'm doing this for them. But the entrepreneur, what do? They get so obsessed with this thing over here, and they put all their energy and all their hopes and their dreams, and they sacrifice this family over here. And then eventually 10 years later, their family crumbles. And they're like, what happened? And it's because they got so obsessed with this entrepreneurship, this money, this success, and it feels good. If you're on top of the world, people are looking at you, people are asking you questions. I'm on podcasts like with you guys, and they forget about what is really important. So like, I think my purpose is like, I need to remind them of this purpose and this vision of their life. And that's one thing I'm doing. So
that is so good. Wow.
I wish you could see all of that over again. If you guys missed that and you're driving and you're zoning out right now, you need to rewind that 2 to 3 minutes, because this is what I think is happening to America. We are so focused on ourselves, what we can accomplish, what we can do, and we put all of our value in that, and we forget all of the people that are looking up to you, right? You have these little kids, however old they are. I don't care if your kids are 15, 16, 17, 30 years old. You're still always going to be their mom and dad, right? You have to pour into them.
And we do it in their name, and it works against them. It's one of those things. And so that brings me to a question, Brett. Like, how did you balance those things where you were, you said up until last year, you were the CEO and, you were basically running that company. So tell us before giving that up, and how you balanced, I would say 2 things: your relationship with God, and secondly, your relationship with your family, your wife, your kids. What did that look like before and now that you don't run that real estate company?
Yeah. I mean, my relationship with my family and just kind of my spiritual walk, it's been up and down the last 10 years. I mean, again, there's been times where I've been distant with both, with my family and with God, because I was so obsessed. I get so focused on the business part of it. Again, I'm sucked in, I'm working so many hours. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I can't be present with my family at home. My wheels are always spinning about deals. And it's hard. And then that's when I have to step back, reflect, and be like, okay, how can I recalibrate my life, my system? How can I put my priorities in check? And it's just a constant thing. So when you talk about the 12-week, right? Most of the time we're talking about business. What do we want to accomplish in business? But like, I do the same thing with my life most of the time. And I actually do that first. And I talk with my wife about that. I'm like, okay, what do we want to accomplish as a family? And if my spiritual walk is not where I want it to be, then I need to focus on that more than my business. So for me, it was always like, it was a balancing act of like right now I'm, we're always pivoting, we're always adjusting. And, I was just talking to my wife the other day, actually last night, and, I'm still kind of balancing all this. And I'm like, hey, we don't do devotionals like we used to. We need to do that. And so we're recalibrating again and focusing on that. So I guess when I was in the midst of it, there was times where I was off balance, times I was in balance, and I tried to do the best that I could. But it is hard to juggle everything. But really, really, what helped me was, again, the delegating, the things that I said, hey, I'm really good at this. I'm terrible at this. Why am I doing this? I don't need to do that. Someone else needs to do that. They're probably better. And an example was, so here's a quick example. So we were doing 250, 300 deals a year. Mm-hmm. And I was the guy who would always approve all of the HUD statements. These are the statements that you get at closings, and it has all the numbers on it and everything, right? But I'm not a detailed person, but that was my money. And like, this is important, and I want it to be right. But so I would approve all the HUDs, and a title person asked me, Brett, why do you approve all the HUDs? Because there would be a gap, because like I'd be busy and they would have to wait on me to look at the HUD to approve it and all that. And I'd say, again, my answer was, well, that's just the way I've always done it. And it's really important. And this is the money part of the business. And I need to do that. But I realized, I was like, well, there's probably a more detailed person in my office that would actually do a lot better than me at approving the HUDs. And I gave that up. So that's just one. It sounds like a small piece of approving the HUDs, because you're like, oh, most people would say that's only going to take me 5 minutes. Yeah. But buying and selling 250 deals, that's 500 HUDs you're going to get in a year. And it's a lot of time and a lot of effort. And if you start to take those little things off of your plate, then you start to have freedom, because those are like everyday urgent things. And that's just a small thing. I started doing that with my phone. My phone needs to ring all the time. Okay, I don't want to do that anymore. Did that with my HUDs. I started doing it with everything in the business until I didn't have anything to do. So I was like, okay, I'll just be the owner. And that's it.
So you basically implemented the who, not how in your life to do the things for you, instead of figuring out how you could do it yourself. That is so amazing. And here's the
key, I think, is what people forget. And this is the hang up, I think, that owners do, is they think that, number one, like, this is my baby. I'm very special. No one can do this better than me, because this is my thing. I've done this, and no one else can do it better. And the reality is, people can do it better than you. And that was a humbling fact. Now, like, everybody in my business does it better than me. I get the interviews and stuff like that, and maybe the credit, but like, I've got people on my team that do it a lot better. And I had to realize I'm not special, and they do it better than me. And that's great. And that's awesome. Yeah. And you got to humble yourself to that fact.
Yeah. In the name of still kind of staying on family, something that I wouldn't say we implemented, my wife and I, in our relationship. She does the real estate business with me, is mandatory date nights once a week. And so that helps us keep our in sync to some degree, right? Have you implemented any mandatory things that kind of keeps you in sync with your wife and your kids and things like that?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm always pivoting, always adjusting. Yeah, a couple of things is, my wife and I do a date night every night, and we don't talk about business. And my relationship with my wife might be a little bit different. She's not in the business, so that probably does help that we don't talk about it. But we do mandatory date nights every week. We do like weekly vision types of meetings. So these are not really date nights. These are more like, hey, what do we want? What do we, let's talk about our schedules, getting on the same page, little systems within your families. My kids just went back to school last week. They went to a new school, and just learning the system of like, who's taking them to school, who's making breakfast, who is getting them dressed, who's waking them up. And then, but we both like to work out in the mornings too. So it's like, okay, how does that all work? So it's just coming up with a little system that works. So we do like that vision each week about all that. With the kids, I think it's really important to get one-on-one with your kids. I interviewed a couple named Jamie and Jim Shields. They do something called 18 Summers, and he talks about getting one-on-one with your kids. So I have 4 kids. So like, when was the last time, if you have 3 or 4 kids, that you spent one-on-one with your kids? Not very often. So it's important. So I try to do at least once every quarter to spend a one-on-one day with each child, without technology, any of that. So that's just one thing. And the kids feel super special. They love it. And we get to do whatever they want to do. So that's daddy kid time. And so that's just a couple of simple things. Doesn't take a lot of effort. It just takes planning. And that's just a few things to keep it priority.
Amazing.
Oscar, go ahead. I think you were gonna.
No, I'm just overwhelmed. Like all of those feedback and everything. Again, I got to keep it simple, right? Because all of those things, if you start implementing them, it's not going to work, right? So I gotta listen to this again. Like me as a consumer now, I gotta be a listener and listen to that again. Right? So I wanna focus a little bit on the who, because that's such an important thing, and that's such a, like in my life right now, we were talking about getting a project management before and everything. And how did you start by the criteria of finding your who, right? I know like you want to remove this, you want to remove that, but really it's not just a criteria based on qualifications, right? There's got to be something else too. In order to create a great team, in order to create your Avengers.
Yeah. I mean, the magic is in the people, and that's really where the magic's at, especially if you want freedom in your life. And so for me, it's just like we just kept at it. I mean, my first employee was someone who kind of hand wrote letters, and he needed a job, and I hired him because he needed a job, and I needed someone to handwrite these letters. And that was my first employee. It kind of went from there, and now we're a little bit more sophisticated with how we hire people. But at the beginning, it was just we would do some personality tests, figure out what they did, and we needed this certain detailed type of job. And it was just kind of like, sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But it doesn't take a lot of people. I think people think, they get overwhelmed because I have to hire all these different positions. But if you get a couple of maybe 2 or 3 really good people, it could change your life, change your business. And really what happened for me was just having a number 2. I mean, this was like the COO person. That was always my hang up. Like, I was running everything. I was doing all the operations plus the vision. And again, it's just a lot of pressure. You have no one to bounce ideas off of that much. You're sitting on this island by yourself. Everyone's looking to you. You have to be on your game all the time. Like, you never quit. It's because everyone's looking to you. Like, if you show up at a meeting, you're like, oh man, I feel terrible. Life is terrible. Like, everybody else is going to feel terrible too. So like, they're all looking to you. You always got to be on your game. So like, so then I met Brian. He was a teacher, no entrepreneurial experience, but he was a good leader, and he worked really hard. And he came in, started, and he worked his way up. He started in the marketing, then he was the dispositions guy selling deals, then he was the COO, now he's the CEO. But I just saw somebody in him that I think could lead, and that was the biggest quality I was looking for. Can you lead? And and that's who kind of took over the company. But that changed the whole game for me. So just kind of look for people like that, people that you love to work with. Culture is huge. I've had some people come in that are great salespeople, but their attitude sucks, and they're all about themselves, and it just doesn't work. So even though there might be a really good person in your team and they're doing some big numbers, but everybody else doesn't like them, they're bringing everybody else down. So there are other people, their numbers stink because they're always complaining about this person. It just doesn't work. So you're one thing my coach told me that really, really helped me is, because I love people. I hate firing people. I don't like any of that, right? I don't like conflict. But he said, your responsibility is to the team. It's not to the person. So like, sometimes we get so emotionally attached to this person, and I do care for them. And I'm like, Bobby, and he's got a family, and I need to help him. But if he's killing the other team, like, your first responsibility is to the team. So you got to remember that too.
Awesome. So thank you.
Yeah.
That's really great. It actually took me back, Brett, because at CG, right, which is a very prestigious mastermind that you're a part of, did they not ask you to give a presentation in front of these millionaires about building a strong team culture? Can you just take us back to that moment and tell us about that?
Yeah, this was at the end of 2017. And so I read the book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Great book. If you guys are listening, Patrick Lencioni wrote that book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. But I read that book and I was like, that's great. But he was talking about all these negative things of what not to do. And I was like, how can you build the all-in team, the loyal team that's going to be here and, have your vision, and how can you build that? And I felt like that's what we had. And so, yeah, I gave this presentation about building them. And the key thing that I think the biggest takeaway that I got was, again, it's not about you and it's about the team. It's about them. Right. So if you can think about your team, a lot of people, they hire people and you're like, oh, I'm hiring you to make me more money so you can do this for me. And I don't care if you work 80 hours a week, don't care about your family. You need to work hard so you can make a lot of money for me. And that's a lot of people's attitudes. And I was like, no, to build the all-in team, to build the culture that you want, you have to focus on that individual. And I started doing things like meeting them for power lunches. And I would talk about their own dreams. I'd say, okay, great. You came in making 30,000 a year. Now you're making 100. Like, that's amazing. Again, taking them back to where they were at. Now they're here. And you start to talk about, what do you want? Like, what's your dream? And I started to dig in, and because they all have dreams. And like an example was, a couple of people said, I want to own my own home. I have kids and a wife, and I've never owned a home. We've always rented, and they're in a real estate game. They're buying houses for the company all the time, or helping us buy houses for the company. They've never owned their own home. So then when I get to see them build their own home, I'm like, wow. And then I get to come back to them and be like, you know what? That was your dream 2 years ago, and you just did it. That's amazing.
I love that.
Celebrate them on that.
Yeah.
That's like some of the things we would do. Just make it about them.
You are absolutely intentionally investing into your people. Do you guys hear that? Intentionally investing does not have to just do with real estate or money. It's in people. It's in your families. And you are transforming lives in what you've done. So kudos to you, Brett. That's awesome.
For sure. So Brett, on the lighter side, man, tell us what do you do for fun? Like what makes you kind of tick outside of taking care of the family, taking care of real estate and helping people and investing in people? What gets you going, buddy?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing, obviously I have 4 children and we do a lot of things together. My wife and I, we're camping with the kids. We're doing little fun trips like that all the time. And really just keeping it simple, keeping it light. My wife and I like to travel. So we're doing, Mexico trips. We went to Israel a few years ago to see Hillsong in concert on the Sea of Galilee. That was pretty sweet. So we do that. But I think, really what drives me is, I like to be creative. So I'm always thinking about how can I be creative, and I like to do fun things. So I do the podcast called the Brett Snodgrass Podcast. We started the Brett Snodgrass channel on YouTube. I just called it my name because I wanted some flexibility because I didn't know exactly where I wanted to go with it. I wanted to get out of the real estate game, not get out of it, but I wanted to, I had this podcast and I was always talking about real estate, but I wanted to talk more about this stuff, faith, family, and freedom. So that's what we're talking more about now. And we want to do it in a creative way. So it's kind of weird. See, people think that I might be kind of funky and weird, but I like to dress up. I like to do Saturday Night Live types of skits. So I want to do education, but do it in an entertaining way. So that's kind of what lights me up. Just kind of having fun with that and being creative and doing some fun stuff like that. But on the lighter side of that, I like boating. I like the lake. I think there's amazing things with huge bodies of water. So I find myself worshiping God in His creation on that type of setting or nature.
Nice. Are you a scuba diver?
I've never scuba dived. No, haven't done that. How about you?
It's amazing, man. I've done it in Egypt, and that was the first time I did it, and man.
It's
amazing.
Awesome. Just a mysterious, it's like the ocean, I feel like, is just crazy mysterious. And it kind of reminds me of
the thing is, man, when you go under that water, you see a new world that you never thought was there. And it's like, wow, this exists, and it kind of just really blows your mind to creation and what God does. And it's like, oh my God. And so now I try to do it. I want to get certified to do it worldwide, actually. So
you guys got to go to Bali. That's where that's at.
No, that'd be awesome. Yeah, I look at the ocean. I think of the mystery of it, kind of like eternity. It just kind of reminds me of that for sure.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So moving forward, just thinking about this, right? I'm looking at the time. We want to respect yours because, Brett, you have a pretty big day. You're interviewing some pretty big names later on. If you were to look at your life, let's say move forward in 5 or 10 years, where do you see yourself on this journey?
Yeah. I think for me, it really just boils down to, I'm in a season right now, and like my kids are pretty young. They're like 3, 6, 7, and 14. So 5 years is a lot in that, like, go from 7 to 12. And so right now I'm in that season that I don't want to sacrifice my family. Like I have aspirations that stuff that I want to do, but it has to incorporate my family. I will never sacrifice them for some of these other things. So number one, has to incorporate them. I see myself, honestly, a passion of mine. Again, I like to create content. I like to impact men's lives. I see myself working with men because I feel like, our identities are into what we do. So if I can talk to them about their purpose, their families, their faith, I would love to pour into men in that type of setting. Maybe do some cool events with men, out in the nature, and kind of have this entrepreneurial thing that we're doing and pouring into them and having a purpose with that. I love speaking to groups. So I see myself kind of speaking with my message. So for me, it's all about people. It's all about God and people. I mean, that's the purpose of our family. If someone asked me the other day, hey, what's the purpose of your family? And I said, love God, love people, period. And that's it.
Yeah.
Very simple. Like, can we love God and love people, and how can we share that message with others through the experiences that I've had? Obviously, I'm an entrepreneur, and I feel like I have experiences, and I can talk into people's lives that maybe a pastor cannot.
Yeah.
And so I want to use that for His glory.
You're already doing some of it. So you are doing guys' retreats. I think you're actually taking Ben away next weekend. He showed me the itinerary. He's like, Miss, this is our men's trip. I'm like, how many pages long is that? I'm like, deep down, I'm super happy that you guys are going away, because I think Ben needs the break. We both work very hard, and you are such a great, I want to say influence, but you're just a great man of God, right? And you're getting these guys away from their families, hiding the phones, and you're just going to do men things, which maybe we do or don't want to know. Guys, do we want him to peel back the layers a little bit?
I want to sign up. When's the next one? I want to sign up for that.
Oscar wants to go.
Yeah, I'll sign up.
Sure. And just so that the listeners know, Ben is Melissa's husband, if you guys didn't pick up on that. And Oscar, would you not say that I had the exact same vision when we talked about doing a men's thing at my house and getting people to come and have this
That's
type
a cool
of
thing, right? We all have the same heart, and having Brett kind of put that into realization and action means that yours is not too far away.
Yeah,
exactly.
You know what I mean? So that's what I get from this. I want to sign up to both.
Yeah, we're doing this thing next weekend, and it's just a fun friends. And it's crazy how, like, I was thinking about, when was the last time I went like on a guy's trip and hung out with some guys and did something like that. And I did one last year, but before that, it was like a decade. Besides, I'm going to take out the business trips, take out all of that stuff, all the masterminds, take all that out, but just guys, all walks of life, getting together. And every guy I've asked said that I would love to, and some people can't because of schedules, but everyone has said, I would love to do that. And I think we just don't do that enough, especially as guys. So you guys should start that too.
I really want to highlight this for both male and female, because it's so important as you become a business owner, as you have your family life, you have all these different things that we're juggling. we're stressed out about, and just having the same sex to connect with, of the same mindset. And that's also something we have implemented in our marriage, where we have every 2 weeks, we have a marriage group that we hang out with. And one of those weeks, the men get together and have men talk, and so sometimes we go out, sometimes we just meet virtually. And it's so refreshing and healthy to sometimes you're having a rough week at home, and you get to have those conversations, not to necessarily dump on your wife, right? Like, because we want to be respectful, but to just get encouraged and to just be around like-minded people. So if you guys are listening, being in these really good masterminds, these good groups, is imperative to just staying afloat in your life.
Yeah. And I also think it's because I also got into the trap of I would only hang out with entrepreneurs, only hang out with very successful people, driven people in these mastermind groups. And I think you have to do that. I think you're rubbing shoulders with those guys. It brings ideas, brings life. But I also think it's important to get back to your roots too, at least for me, and hang out with people maybe that aren't entrepreneurs, that do have 9-to-5 jobs, that talk about different things. Because sometimes when we're hanging out with these mastermind groups, we get into the trap of, oh my gosh, I made 7 figures last year, but this guy made 8. I have to do more, and I have to do more.
Yeah.
But what if it's not your vision? What if that isn't your vision? Well, exactly. I don't know. So I think it's just keeping you grounded and hanging out with different types of groups is good.
100%. Oscar, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I was gonna make a joke like those memes. That's not necessarily true. Like it's like you gotta hang out with like the top 10 people who has, I mean, that's true, but you gotta keep yourself on the ground, right? Yeah. Because there's always someone out there that's making more money. There's always someone out there that's making bigger lives than you, right? So you gotta keep yourself grounded. So pay attention to what you see on the internet, because now you have to know your purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. I was just going to say that it ties back to your own goals and your own purpose. If you don't have that locked down for yourself, you would be pulled into someone else's purpose. You'd be chasing someone else's goals. And it's so important to understand and know who you want to be and stick with that, because anything other than that, it won't be yours. There's a lot of people living someone else's purpose right now because they're trying to keep up with the Joneses.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So right. Guys, this has been a phenomenal interview today. We thank you so much for sharing your time with us. We know you're busy, but we know that you have a lot of gems and a lot of gold that you've just dropped with us today. So on that note, do you have any final thoughts or any one thing that you would share with our audience moving forward if they were to take one simple thing out of this interview to change their life today?
Yeah, I mean, thank you guys so much for having me on, Oscar, Keston, Melissa. I really, really appreciate it. One question that I didn't get that I think I had on the notes was, number one, some people are afraid to kind of grow old and they reach a certain age and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so old or whatever. I actually find a lot of, fulfillment in it. I had a lot of wisdom when you grow older, and I love interviewing people that are past myself, right? So like I love interviewing maybe a 50-year-old, 60-year-old, 70-year-old, 80-year-old. My dad just turned 70, and I love chatting with my dad, right? Because we've gone through a lot of journeys together, and my dad just turned 70 2 days ago, and he had his big 70th birthday party. And this really, really hit me. And sometimes you don't realize this, but my dad retired from coaching. So he was the head basketball coach for 25 years. And he retired from coaching, which was his identity, right? You go to the grocery store, hey, coach, nice game. You go out anywhere, he is the coach of that community. And that was his identity for 25 years. I graduated, he coached me, and he retired at 49 years old. So you don't see too many basketball coaches, especially in the state of Indiana, retire from coaching at 49 years old. And I was digging through his stuff, making a scrapbook, and I found this letter that my dad had written to the school when he retired. And it brings back tears. I was crying, Dad was crying, and I read this letter in front of 40 of our friends. And the letter said, I would love to continue coaching. It's one of the most difficult decisions I've ever made, but I was getting ready to play in college. My dad wanted to come watch me play basketball in college. And he said, I can't watch Brett play in college and also be a coach. And you only get one chance to watch your kids play. So I'm going to give up coaching.
Wow.
And for me, that was just that word of sacrifice. We can't do it all. And sometimes we have to make a decision in our lives on what is more important. My dad wanted to coach. He also wanted to come watch me play and be a significant part of my life during that time. And he had to choose. So I guess my advice to you guys is put your priorities in check. What is really most important to you? Go after it and keep it in front of you and live your purpose.
I love that.
Wow.
That's phenomenal.
That gave me goosebumps.
All right, thank you so much. On behalf of all of us, we've so enjoyed having you today. And to all the listeners out there for the Intentional Investor Show, thank you so much for tuning in. This has been a phenomenal show. Have a great day.
Thanks, guys.
Peace.
Bye.
Peace.
Hey guys, it's Melissa here from the Intentional Investor Show. If you like what you hear and if you want to dig deeper into your own real estate journey, hit the subscribe button below. We would love for you to join us. Thank you so much. Until next time.